Okay, so get ready because today we're diving deep into AI in education. But, and this is important, we're not talking about, robot teachers taking over classrooms, at least not yet.
Right, right.
Today's deep dive is all about how AI is already changing the game when it comes to making education accessible for everyone.
And it really is fascinating stuff. We're talking about breaking down barriers that, frankly, seemed insurmountable just a few years ago.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's define something. When we say digital accessibility, what exactly do we mean?
So digital accessibility is all about making sure that digital content, like websites, videos, you name it, is usable by people of all abilities.
So that means someone who is, say, visually impaired or has difficulty hearing can still learn and engage with online content just like anyone else.
Exactly. And what's so exciting is how AI is stepping up to make that happen. But to really appreciate how far we've come, I think it helps to rewind the clock a bit.
Oh, I love a good origin story. Take me back to the early days.
All right. Picture this. It's the 1960s. Researchers at the University of Illinois create this thing called Play-Doh, one of the very first computer-assisted learning systems. Now, you got to imagine these clunky terminals, text-based interactions, definitely no fancy graphics or anything like that.
So a little bit like trying to explain a smartphone to someone who's only ever used a rotary phone.
Yeah, kind of. But here's the thing. Play-Doh was revolutionary because it planted the seeds for personalized learning.
Wow, back then, even the idea of a computer tailoring lessons to individual students must have seemed mind-blowing.
Oh, absolutely. And then fast forward to the 1970s at Stanford, we have the development of Scholar, this system created by Jamie Carbonell. Now, Scholar was a huge leap forward because it could actually act as an intelligent tutor, guiding students through tough concepts and giving them feedback.
So we've gone from teaching computers geography with Plato in the 60s to them acting as personal tutors just a decade later with Scholar.
Precisely. And you can see how those early systems really set the stage for the incredible AI-powered tools we have today.
Okay, so we're seeing that theme of personalization emerge early on, but things really start to accelerate in the 2000s, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is when things get really interesting. You see, in the early 2000s, we have the rise of what we call intelligent tutoring systems, like ALS and Newton. These platforms took personalized learning to a whole new level. I mean, they could actually analyze a student's strengths and weaknesses and then, get this, adjust the learning path based on that.
So like if I was struggling with a math concept, ALS or Newton wouldn't just keep throwing the same type of problem at me over and over again. It would actually recognize I needed a different approach.
Exactly. That's the beauty of these AI-powered systems. They adapt to individual learning styles and pace, making education more effective and, dare I say, more engaging.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got these intelligent tutoring systems really taking off. But then something happens in 2009 that kind of changes the game for accessibility. Am I right?
You are so right. 2009, Google introduces automatic captioning for YouTube. And, sure, it was a little rough around the edges at first.
Uh-huh. Just a little bit.
But even then, it was clear this was a game changer, particularly for accessibility.
Totally. Because suddenly, millions of people who were previously excluded from video content because of hearing impairments had a way to access that information. It was huge.
A pivotal moment, really. It paved the way for a whole wave of AI-powered accessibility tools.
And that brings us to the last few years, where it feels like there's been an explosion of AI tools designed specifically for accessibility in education. It's incredible. It's like AI is taking those early breakthroughs in personalized learning and, using them to tackle accessibility in ways that seemed like science fiction just a few years ago.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? And I think what's important to emphasize is that it's not just about making content accessible. It's about making it engaging.
Right, because what's the point if the information is technically accessible but puts you to sleep?
Exactly. It needs to be something that captures your attention, that makes you want to learn. And that's what some of these newer AI tools are doing so well.
Okay, so, what's an example? What's something that's really blown your mind lately?
Well, image description technology has come a long way, let me tell you. We're talking about AI that can analyze an image and then describe it to someone who is visually impaired.
So not just, oh, there's a tree in a house kind of thing.
No, not at all. It's much more nuanced than that. We're talking about AI that can actually understand the context of the image, the emotions being conveyed, even things like the historical context.
Okay, now that's impressive.
Right. So, for example, there's this really cool project out of Arizona State University. They're using ChatGPT-4 to create these incredibly detailed image descriptions.
What?
It can even identify objects, emotions, even extract text from images.
Wow, so a student who is visually impaired could essentially see a textbook image through this AI description.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Absolutely. And the best part is, this isn't just some, one-off project. This technology is becoming more and more widespread.
Oh, that's good to hear. So it's not just limited to one university or anything.
Not at all. We're seeing things like the NVDA add-in, which works with screen readers, and Astica.ai has this whole API that lets developers build image captioning directly into their apps.
Okay, so that's image descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
What about audio? I remember those old audio descriptions on movies, and honestly, they were so boring. Has AI made a difference there too?
Oh my goodness, yes. It's like night and day. You see, instead of those dry, basic descriptions, companies like WPP and Microsoft are now using, get this, GPT-4 to create these super immersive audio descriptions.
Okay, so like how immersive are we talking? Give me an example.
Imagine, instead of just hearing a painting of a woman in a blue dress, you get this incredibly vivid description. The woman's expression, the brushstrokes, the historical context, all those details that bring the artwork to life.
It's like having a personal art historian right there with you.
Precisely. It's about making the experience, the learning experience, truly engaging, regardless of someone's ability to see or hear.
That's incredible. And it really drives home the point that AI can open up a whole world of possibilities for people who might otherwise be excluded. But it's not just about visual and auditory impairments, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're also starting to see AI being used to support students with cognitive differences.
100%. And that's a really exciting area of development. For example, Goodwin University is using AI to help students with things like note-taking and mind mapping.
Oh, that's interesting. So instead of having to struggle with traditional note-taking, which, let's be honest, isn't for everyone, these students have AI tools to help them organize information in a way that makes sense for them.
Exactly. And it can be a game changer for students who learn differently, who might need a little extra support to really grasp those complex concepts.
Right. It's about providing multiple pathways to learning, which is something AI is uniquely suited to do.
And then there's this whole other level of cool, when we start talking about things like robots. Specifically, there's this robot, ZB, at the University of Central Florida.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about ZB. It's a robot that helps students with disabilities, but it also teaches them how to code, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
ZB is this amazing example of how we can use AI to create a more inclusive learning environment. It helps students develop social skills, teaches them valuable coding skills, and really just boosts their confidence.
It's like the perfect blend of technology and human interaction, all geared towards helping these students thrive.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Creating an educational landscape where everyone has the opportunity to succeed.
Absolutely. But there's also, and maybe this is just me, but there's also a bit of a paradox here when we talk about AI and accessibility, don't you think? Because on the one hand, we're talking about this technology that has the potential to, radically improve the lives of people with disabilities. But are those same individuals, the ones who stand to benefit the most, actually involved in shaping this technology? That's the question I keep coming back to.
That is a crucial question. And to be honest, the unfortunate reality is that people with disabilities are often, underrepresented when it comes to the development of these tools.
Which seems, kind of backwards, right? You'd think the people who are going to be using these tools every day would be front and center in the design process.
You would think so, wouldn't you? And it really highlights this, this blind spot in the tech industry. We desperately need more diverse voices at the table, to make sure that these tools are truly designed with accessibility in mind from the ground up.
It's not enough to just create a tool that technically works. It needs to be something that actually makes sense for the people who are going to be using it, right?
100%. And that requires really understanding the lived experiences of people with disabilities.
So even within the disability community, there's going to be a wide range of experiences and needs.
Exactly. Take visual impairment, for instance. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Developers need to be thinking about things like, different levels of vision, different preferences for how information is presented, even cultural nuances and how images are interpreted.
It's about going beyond just a checklist of accessibility features, right? It's about really thinking about how these tools can empower users and give them more control over their learning experience.
Empowerment, that's the key word. And that requires listening to users, incorporating their feedback, making accessibility a core value, not just an afterthought.
It sounds like a call to action, not just for developers, but for all of us.
It absolutely is. As users, as consumers, we have a responsibility to demand accessible technology, to support those companies that are prioritizing inclusivity, to amplify the voices of those who are often overlooked,
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into AI and accessibility in education, I'm left with this feeling of cautious optimism,
Yeah.
Because it feels like we're on the verge of something truly transformative.
Right. We are.
But like with any powerful tool, AI has the potential to be, both a bridge and a barrier, depending on how we choose to use it.
That's such an important point. It all comes down to, it comes down to us, doesn't it? Will we use this technology to create a more inclusive and equitable learning environment for everyone? Or will we allow those existing inequalities to just be replicated and amplified in the digital space?
Big questions, and ones that I hope our listeners will continue to grapple with long after this deep dive is over. Because it's not just about the technology itself, right? It's about who has access to it, who's shaping its development, and ultimately, whose needs are being served. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Till next time.